Here we are.
Here we are.
Who are you?
I'm Claire Himstead. Hi, I'm the director of Macbeth.
And I'm Liv Peterson. I'm the dramaturg for Macbeth. Yay!
Yay!
And I know, Claire, you actually had a hand in choosing this show to work on, which is, well, is it a rarity, do you think?
I don't know if it's a rarity, but I know that it does happen a lot of times where people don't initially get the play that they apply with, but I was fortunate in that this is the play that I applied with, and so I was very happy to have the opportunity to be able to do it.
So why did you apply with this show? You know, out of all scripts ever, which, like, hundreds upon thousands upon billions, why Macbeth?
Yeah, this is a play that kind of came into my orbit during the pandemic. I had seen some production photos of a university by me. The costumes were school uniforms that looked very similar to where I went to school, and then I saw that it was a production of Macbeth, and I said, oh, is this just a concept that they're doing? That's really interesting. So I looked it up, and it turns out that it was a adaptation that was uniquely in this setting. And since I'd gone to Catholic school my whole life, and Macbeth is one of my favorite stories, and one of my favorite theatrical experiences to date, I thought that it would be a really great way to merge two things that are very important to me together. And thus it was born.
And here we are. So that's really what I wanted the focus of this conversation to be about, because not many people have the experience of going to Catholic school.
It's a unique experience, and if you would have asked me while I was still in it, I don't think I would have had much to say, just because it was all I knew.
Sure.
I've been in Catholic school from the time I was in kindergarten up until my senior year of high school. So there's a lot of things that I wasn't able to really go, oh, perhaps that wasn't a universal experience, until I was on the other side of it.
Like what? Like, give me an example.
In all of my years of school, through grade school and all the way through high school, religion classes were one of the only academic disciplines that was mandatory.
Huh.
And just how it was such a part of everyday life. Because at my high school, while we were a Catholic school, there wasn't a rule that you had to be Catholic to attend the school by any means, but you did still have to participate in school mass, which was once a week, sometimes a little less, and then any other liturgical activities that we had, and including religion classes, most of which were centered on Catholicism.
Sure. I remember when you told me that not very few students that go to Catholic school are actually Catholic, but that, like, it's not a requirement.
Mm-mm.
And that kind of blew my mind a little bit.
Yeah, it seems counterintuitive, but no, we had a lot of students who weren't Catholic. There were a lot of different Christian denominations who, especially with how spread out St. Louis, where I'm from, is, sometimes you just go to a Catholic high school because it's the closest school to you.
Sure. And
it's easier that way. But yeah, we had a lot of students who were different denominations of Christianity. We had a couple students who were Mormon. It really, anything went. There was no religious requirement to attend the school.
Gotcha.
And then we had many who also just didn't practice religion, but that didn't exempt from classwork at the same time or anything of that.
Sure, absolutely. So, like, how would Catholicism manifest in schoolwork or, like, in classes?
In classes, religion class is the obvious answer here.
Yeah.
But it was a little different every year. So starting with first year, there were classes such as Who is Jesus? Looking at, like, biblical study and, like, specifically New Testament a lot of times. But then especially moving into upper grades, a lot of our classwork was focused on, like, finding our place in Christianity. So senior year, the two classes you were required to take, one was world religions, which was actually a really great class because it pretty much looked at every religion that was not Catholicism.
Oh, neat.
So it was great to have a small window to learn about that. But then our other class was responding to the call of Jesus, which was about looking at living single life, married life, or life in a convent.
Man. Yeah, as someone who went to public school, I can safely say I never had that experience. But would you say that, because you're someone who's female presenting, you know, and identify as a woman, do you think that you had a different or, like, a more tailored experience because you were a girl? Are a girl?
Yes. And because so much of it, both in just, like, the way we talked about the student body in general, we would always be referred to as ladies, or, like, our school motto, we stand as women. etc. And so for me, that is an identity that fit. But for many of my classmates and people who I was friends with at school, that was not the case, and there wasn't really any wiggle room built in around that,
Gotcha.
which was a frustrating experience.
Yeah, absolutely. But when it came to classes like you were just describing, where it was talking about, married life or maybe going into a convent, was that specifically tailored for femininity?
It was all tailored to femininity. For the class where we learned about the different callings, our final was actually, we had to visit a convent in the metropolitan area of our city, and we had to go on a tour and ask the sisters questions, and so each group had to pick a different order to go visit.
Oh, that's interesting.
It was a learning experience, but yes, it was all tailored toward femininity.
Gotcha.
And both in that class and then also the other subsequent classes before that, especially video wise and media, listened to a lot of media and did a lot of readings about what it means to be a Christian woman specifically, and that was pretty much the only perspective.
Sure. So what does it mean to be a Christian woman, or what were you taught?
A lot of it was looking at examples of both the lives of saints and especially the Virgin Mary, who in Catholicism is very much hailed as someone who is the role model for what women should be, being gentle, being merciful, being kind. And so holding that on a pedestal above all else, I think, is something that was very present in a lot of my education, which again adds to the frustration of what if I'm someone who doesn't fit into this model of femininity? What is my place?
Right, absolutely. And kids at that age are kind of notoriously angsty too, and you feel a lot of emotions, and you feel like you're crammed into a body that's changing and doesn't quite fit, and there's just a lot of angst and high wired emotions.
And it's especially frustrating too with those big emotions, because you're at an age where everything feels so big, and a lot of the things, both with the Virgin Mary example, but then also with what we're being taught about womanhood, so much of it is tied to motherhood in particular. But when you're 13, 14, 15, 16, that is one of the last things on your mind.
Absolutely.
So it's you're being talked to about these things, but you're at a phase where you're not a child, but you don't quite feel like an adult.
Right.
And so there is an anger that comes with trying to find where you fit in.
Oh, absolutely. You're also dealing with a lot of things for the first time, like menstruation or being sexualized or whatever. Unfortunately, maybe not for the first time. But I know we've talked previously about how the schoolgirl and the uniform specifically is something that's so iconically sexualized.
Yep.
So what were your interactions with that? Having it both be a symbol of unity and everyone at the school dressing the same and hypothetically having the same values, but also
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying.
I'll say it. There are times when I miss wearing a uniform because I miss getting out of bed and not even having to put a second thought into what I was going to wear for the day. That was bliss. But at the same time, I think I missed out on a lot of opportunities for self-expression, and it's something that I didn't really think about until I came to college and had to actually build a wardrobe for the first time.
Sure.
And go, I don't know what I like to wear.
Yeah.
I have no idea.
That's
and
so fair.
Still figuring it out. It's been fun. But with uniforms in particular, and something that I think about a lot is how this idea of the image of a schoolgirl is something that's really sexualized all the time in a way that is so very gross.
Yeah.
And wearing that, but at the same time being aware of that is a weird place to be in, especially during school. We're in a building all day, we're interacting with each other, but then going out and interacting with the community after school. I have plenty of friends and myself who have been catcalled and leered at while wearing our school uniforms out of school hours.
Yeah. And it's something that you don't even have a say in. You have to wear it.
Which is one of the most frustrating parts.
Right.
And my school wasn't as strict as some of the other all-girl schools in the areas, but there were a lot of regulations on skirt length, etc. But
yeah,
there's only so much you can do.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So, in terms of directing this production, then, how did you feel about translating that experience in Catholic school to something that we see on stage, even if it is through that Shakespearean filter of Macbeth?
Yeah. So something that I was really interested in with this was this idea that they come in and they're all dressed more or less the same, but even though they have this thing of a uniform that ties them together, there's more than that ties them as a group. And something that our costume designer Delaney Kitzman and I have had a lot of conversations about is how we approach the uniforms in particular in a way that's like, yes, they're uniforms, yes, they're young, without being like, we're girls doing Shakespeare.
Yeah.
Or also in a way that sexualizes them.
Absolutely.
Through uniforms. Because that is not our intent. They're just students simply existing.
Right. And it specifically says within the play, like, these are not girls playing at being men. These are girls just reading the lines.
They just are.
They just are. It's not a matter of, well, what gender can be ambitious or what gender can be malicious or violent, because that is something that people of all genders experience.
And with these things that you're taught, both, I would say, in private school through the lens of a lot of these figures that we look at, but just in general as someone who's socialized female at this age, you're taught to be passive, you're taught to be nice, to be smiling, to be polite all the time. And when that's forced on you at the day, what is your outlet to get rid of that? And they chose one of Shakespeare's most bloodiest plays to be their outlet for that, which is fascinating to me because it's such a rarity to be able to express all of the anger and frustration and big feelings that you're feeling at this age, when you're at the intersection of a lot of different points of your life.
Yeah.
And that's all converging, and you need something to release it.
And it's kind of a miracle that these girls all found each other and found people who also want to express those emotions and are feeling the same thing, even if they come from wildly different backgrounds.
Oh, yes. And I think that's been one of my favorite parts of this process is, like, talking with the actors and, like, building these characters, because everyone has a different motive for being in Macbeth Club. They didn't all get together and go, yes, we are going to do this because this.
Yes.
Someone just wants to be a part of the group. Someone really resonates with the story and wants the opportunity to create. Someone has never really had an opportunity to do theater before and really wants to break away from the discipline of their everyday life. It's an outlet for everybody in different ways.
Absolutely. And I mean, that idea of having an outlet is so important when you're that age. You know, whether it be doing Shakespeare with your friends or, you know, like having a journal or like going on the internet and looking at memes for hours so you can ignore your parents.
Yep. And something that's been on my mind a lot for this show in particular too is just how important and impactful storytelling is, like both for good and for bad. Because in religious education, and specifically from my perspective with Catholic education, so much of it is told through stories of the lives of the saints, stories and parables and things like that. Because, and I know for me personally, storytelling is a big part about how I learn and how things are important to me. And so if that method is something that resonates for these students too, how storytelling is something that binds them together and something that they can get into this world of a collective fantasy through, where they can just fully immerse and go for it with each other.
Absolutely. And that's a kind of intimacy in and of itself, you know, to be able to trust the people around you is really valuable. And I trust you.
I trust you too.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
And on that note, thanks for talking to me, buddy.
Thank you so much.
Of course.